was a great methodologist in this field. So the first thing is health and longevity. Let me start with cardiovascular. And this is mostly for the men in the audience. This is what you're going to die of. And the question is, what does your well-being right now tell us about the probability of cardiovascular death? So there are about 20 studies of the following form. At time one, we look at the health of your heart, blood pressure, cholesterol, BMI, the amount you exercise, optimism and pessimism. I'm going to concentrate on that for the moment. And then we wait for as long as 30 years. And we ask the question, to what extent are each of these things risk factors or protective factors for dying of a heart attack over the next period? And basically, to summarize the cardiovascular literature, this is about 20 studies I'm talking about. If you don't smoke, that adds between 2 to 3 years of your life. If you exercise regularly, that adds about 3 years to your life. Weight doesn't seem to matter very much. Cholesterol and blood pressure are small but significant predictors. But the big predictor turns out to be optimism and pessimism. So let me tell you what I mean by optimism and pessimism here and how it's measured. So a pessimistic person, and this will become relevant when we talk about Trump and Harris in about 20 minutes, a pessimistic person, when bad events occur to them, have 3 dimensions that are relevant. The pessimist thinks it's whatever the cause is, it's going to last forever. So if you fail an examination and you think, I'm stupid, well, stupidity doesn't go away in time. That's pessimism. On the other hand, if you think, well, the reason you didn't get a good grade on the exam is not because you're stupid, it's because you had a hangover. Well, hangovers go away in time. So the optimist believes that bad events are temporary. The pessimist believes they're permanent. The second dimension is global versus local. So if a bad event occurs to you, if you're rejected by someone you love, and you think, I'm unlovable, well, that's going to hurt you with all the people you date. That's going to hurt you across the board. If you ever, on the other hand, if you think, that boyfriend I was with is just a cruel, mean bastard, that's local. It's just about him. It's not about all men. So the optimist thinks it's local. The pessimist thinks it's global. And the third dimension is the optimist believes you can do something about it. The pessimist believes there's nothing you can do, and you're helpless. So there are questionnaires, and when I talk about the last American election, you can look at speeches and rate, have blind people rate the extent to which every sentence that has a cause in it is optimistic or pessimistic. So there are good ways of rating optimism and pessimism. So in the cardiovascular literature, this is a big risk factor. Between 6 and 8 years of life difference between the upper quartile in optimism and the bottom quartile, the pessimistic quartile. It's the biggest risk factor that we found. It's about equivalent to not smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Morbidity and mortality are closely related to one dimension of PERMA, and that's the optimism-pessimism one. Now, there's specificity here as well. So it turns out if you don't look at cardiovascular death, but you look at all-cause mortality, it turns out there's about a 4-year difference between optimism and pessimism across all causes of mortality. In the cancer literature, I can't find a difference between optimism and pessimism in the literature for morbidity or mortality, but the optimists who have cancer have better quality of life up until the end. Infectious illness turns out to be the opposite of cardiovascular for the positive side of life. So Sheldon Cohn did the following. He took volunteers and paid them $300 apiece and injected into their nose rhinovirus that produces a cold in 50% of people. And then at that time he measures two relevant things. He measures optimism and pessimism, and he measures merriment, laughing a lot, good cheer. You isolate people for 2 weeks after that. Optimism has no effect on infectious illness. Optimists get colds in this at a 50% rate. What makes a difference is merriment, good cheer, laughing a lot, subjective well-being. Here, the high positive affective people, only 25% gets colds. So interestingly, there's specificity here. For cardiovascular disease, what you think about the future has a major effect on the probability of death. But it has no effect on the probability of getting a cold. Oh, by the way, you don't ask people, do you have a cold? You actually weigh the mucus. So these are rigorous studies. On the other hand, how merry you are has no effect on cardiovascular prognosis. But it does affect the probability of getting a cold, an infectious illness, and how you think about the future has no effect on getting a cold. So that's a summary of the health and longevity literature. People like optimists more than pessimists, as it turns out. Misery loves company, but company does not like misery. And the way people found that out is they would have people phone you up with a script, and you would talk in either a depressed voice or a chirpy voice. And you just wait till the person hangs up on you. You hang up on unhappy people quicker than unhappy people. Optimists have better social relationships. Work productivity, and I'm going to talk about this in about 15 minutes when we talk about the relationship of well-being to productivity at work. And what we'll see is that indeed the happiness of a workforce is a major predictor of stock market price of the corporation and profitability of a corporation. I'll hold off on that for a moment since so many of you work in corporations. Virtuous behavior. So when positive psychology started, Barbara Ehrenreich wrote a book. Can you hear me through here as well? No. Okay. I'll walk around then. In which she said, we really don't want people to be happy. And we certainly don't want a science that makes people happy. Because happy people don't care about the world. They're bad citizens. Now, if that were true, I, in fact, would not be speaking here today. That's a devastating criticism. But there are about 20 studies of political activism, how much money you give to charity, how much you volunteer. And here it's the happy people who volunteer, who vote, who participate politically, and who are generous in charity. Depressed people are not. And so it turns out Ehrenreich was